Hello, boys and girls. The Falcons no longer control their own destiny, relying on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers right now. That being said, I couldn't be happier. Because this strapping young man, Scary Sean, and don't laugh, I'm contractually obligated to say it that way to use his name, image, or likeness, has decided to finally come out of the closet as an undercover Falcons fan. Now, me and Sean are kind of like besties. I mean, this picture right here, I actually bought him this hat last year at the Falcons versus Bucs game. He's been hiding it for you guys for the last year, but with the help of support groups, he's finally decided to live his truth. C Mitchell checking in with a Week 18 deep dive bird bath. We're gonna break down the Falcons-Panthers game. We give you three people that this is a huge game for. And we're gonna beat a dead horse about Kyle Pitts, and this time I brought the opinion of a former NFL great to explain what I mean. First and foremost, I've seen a very interesting debate going on whether Mike Evans or Julio Jones is a better receiver. And honestly, I think it's a pretty fair debate for a person to have. Eye test, if you looked at it and you asked me this like 5 years ago, I'd have told you that you were crazy to be trying to compare Julio Jones and Mike Evans. And just physically, the only thing that I think that Mike Evans does better than Julio Jones is he has better hands. Otherwise, Julio Jones is just a better all-around athlete. And including the type of things that you can ask him to do on the field, there's just way more that Julio does on the field. He has more receptions per year. Julio has fan where he's considered the best receiver in the league, but Mike Evans, he's never really been considered the best receiver in the league, but he's just always 1,000 yards everywhere, consistently. You got to look at that. He's got more touchdowns than him, and over the course of his career, you could argue that he's caught up to a lot of these guys. There's a lot to be said for longevity and being healthy for so long. So I don't think it's out of the question to ask who. I think that overall, Mike Evans has had a better career than Julio Jones, undoubtedly, because he's got the hardware to go along with a lot of those yards and those numbers. But I think if you're just going off an eye test, Julio Jones is a better athlete. But I want you guys to tell me in the chat, who do you think is a better receiver? Panthers versus Falcons. They're a terrible team. Hashtag analyzed. The Panthers are at the bottom of the league in offense and in defense. Bryce Young has had a really rough and shaky start to his career, but he really doesn't have anybody to throw to. They were hoping that Leggett is going to be something, and those guys could still turn into something. But for Bryce Young, this is a huge game. The whole organization right now is having to decide whether they want to keep him or whether they want to move on from him. Over the past few weeks, he's looked a little bit better. I haven't watched a whole lot of film on him this year, but he looks like he's gotten a little bit more accurate, and he's using his athleticism to his advantage a little bit more now. That being said, this is going to be a really tough game for them. They have so many players out injured this game. Chuba Hubbard out on injured reserve. J.C. Horn not going to play this game, and they're missing a few other players as well. So they're going to have their work cut out for them. But that being said, if I'm Bryce Young, I'm looking at this as a big opportunity to show that I got moxie, that I can come out here and I'm a guy that you can really depend on as a franchise quarterback. I'm wanting to come out and have a good game against A.J. Terrell and Jesse Bates and those guys in that secondary. And the defense that seems like it's starting to click a little bit right now. Even though they're a bad team and this is the end of the season, franchises may want to tank, but players themselves, they're not tanking. You still got guys who are going to come out and give it their all and try to come and upset the Falcons. It's not the same as the Saints would be, but it is still a division rival, and it's our second longest opponent in the division as well too. So they definitely want to come out and get this W. And if I'm Bryce Young, I don't want to end my year on a bad note. I want to make sure I'm going into the offseason having the confidence of the team and the fans and the rest of the franchise. So huge game for him. Another person that this is going to be a huge game for is Raheem Morris. By now, it's gone around. It's no secret that fans have just really lost a lot of confidence in him. And rightfully so. A lot of fans should be upset with Raheem Morris. He mismanaged that game last week and has made some questionable calls throughout the season. I don't think we should get rid of him, and I think that these are growing pains for him, and this is a game that he's going to need to definitely work on things. He has to try to attempt to establish some type of trust with the rapport of the fans and make sure that he doesn't lose his team completely. Because going into the offseason, losing against your division rival and probably the worst team in the league, arguably, I mean, you know, talking about bottom 5 teams, a 3-4 win team right now, you know, you can't go out and play against Washington the way you did and have these promising victories against these other bad teams and let your division rival beat you, who you're definitely on paper better than. It's kind of a trap game a little bit for the Falcons. I think that this is a game that they can try to implement some more things to their scheme and see who some of their other better players are as well too, and try to play with better situational awareness with football as well. At the end of the day, we still do have our hopes alive right now, and all we can do is control what we can control, which is winning this game. If we lose this game and Tampa Bay loses, it doesn't matter. We're not going to make the playoffs anyway. And last year, we actually had something to play for. We lost to them. Can't just take this game lightly. Last person this is a huge game for is Michael Penix. Not because he could potentially lose this game or that because this is a big opponent for him, but because, you know, you want to end your season on a high note, like I was saying earlier for Bryce Young. As a young quarterback, it's a confidence builder, and it would be terrible for him to lose to such a bad opponent or come out and have a bad game. But what we've seen so far, I think he's going to bounce back great from having a loss. I mean, even in the last game that he was in, he's placed in some pretty bad situations, whether it was coaching or whether it was just blunders and plays. And he bounced back every time that you needed him to. He went down and he led the team to a tied-up game to send it into overtime after having sat on the bench for such a long time and trying to get back into his rhythm. A lot of rookie quarterbacks, they wouldn't have been able to do that. I mean, this is a very mature kid. When you even hear him talk in the press conference.
Chemistry, like that's something I already know. Like I've known, like we got to get it, and we're building it each and every day. Like each and every day we're putting in that work. Today we get extra throws and stuff like that. You know, just trying to build that chemistry so that we can be on the same page. And I'm not sealing the ball over their heads whenever they're open. So
it's like how last week when he threw his first touchdown and it got thrown into the stands, he was talking about how he wasn't even thinking about that at that time. And that's the type of things that you want to hear. And I genuinely believe him. Seems like he has a short memory for any of the mistakes that he makes. He goes and throws an interception, he comes back right back and scores. You need him to make a play at any given point in time, he goes and he makes that play.
You have two mindsets. You can be like, dang, like this mess us up, or you can go out and be like, okay, you still got to make a play.
I believe that if you allow him to make those timeouts, he actually goes down and leads the team. If you play into what Tom Brady's philosophy is, according to Bill Belichick, check it out.
And I changed a little bit on this with Brady. Okay, what I always try to do is you have 3 timeouts in the 2-minute situation. You use your first timeout between 2 minutes and 1 minute. You use your second timeout between 1 minute and 30 seconds, and then you use your third timeout sometime under 30 seconds. Now, that wasn't an absolute rule, but that was a rule of thumb. But Brady said, look, I'd rather have more time and less timeouts because it gives me more options than less time and a timeout. So let me handle it. If I screw it up, then that's my fault, and you can take it away from me. But I would rather you take the timeout with 27 seconds and give me more time to do something with, then run a play with 27 seconds, and now we go to 13 seconds and we have 1 timeout.
Kind of have this first-year quarterback, rookie quarterback, with Raheem getting his first real shake at a head coach job where he got to actually pick his staff and everything. You want these guys to be able to grow together. I think they're going to be learning off each other, and they're going to be filling out each other and filling out what they think in these special moments, in these certain moments right now. And I think he has the confidence of the coaching staff and his team. He also might be without his 2 top receivers this game. Actually, correction, Drake London is off of the injury report, so it's just Darnell Mooney that's going to be a game-time decision, which could give him a chance to build some more rapport with Kyle Pitts, because I believe that he can be the key to unlocking his career.
We talked throughout the game, and we talked about some of the matchups he had, and he felt like he had an advantage on some of his matchups. So, you know, I feel like give him an opportunity to make a play.
I'm going to give you a few reasons why you shouldn't give up on Kyle Pitts. It's not because of a matter of personal bias or anything like that. I just happen to realize what a 6'6" target is, and I've seen how good he is, and I realize they haven't been giving him the opportunities that he should be given. I got a lot of flack in my last video from some people talking about how Kyle Pitts sucks. But if you ask former NFL legend Steve Smith, he kind of agrees with me.
Kyle Pitts was doing a really good job, but they went away from him. There's been a lot of talk, is Kyle Pitts the guy? But you got to give a guy some confidence, and confidence comes by throwing him the football. Almost 2 quarters and not getting targets. Guys got to get in rhythm.
I know you want to see him out there with 1,000 yards, but the Falcons, they definitely aren't using him in the right ways. Like I said in the previous video, he's the type of guy that you want to get into the slot a little bit more. And he has trouble getting off the press. That's why I wouldn't play him on the line of scrimmage quite as often. Get him the ball in space. Let him run that seam route. Dink and dunk to him a little bit more. Run him on actual tight end routes. Don't make him have to actually run a lot of quick twitch routes. If you look at him, he has slow feet, like compared to a wide receiver, of course. You want to get him the ball and let him use his strength a little bit more. And I think that as they get a little bit more creative, like I said, the play I showed you last week with that bootleg, you have that fake that you can run off of the outside zone and bootleg to the opposite side. That's what you do with tight ends. That is a bread and butter play to get tight ends involved. That's actually what Kansas City does with Travis Kelce when they want to get him involved in the offense. Tight end is about sitting and finding gaps in the zones, and that's what you want him to do. That's what he's used to doing as a tight end. So that's why people say that he's lazy, or they think that he looks lazy, on camera, but I think a lot of people don't really understand what they're evaluating with tight ends. A tight end isn't going to run routes anything like a wide receiver would, with few exceptions. Positions like wide receiver and tight end, they require other positions to first do their job right in order for you to be able to do your job or even have an opportunity. You're going to have the offensive line get the snap together and make sure that they pass protect for the quarterback. And you're going to need the quarterback to actually look your way and make sure that he gets you the ball accurately as well too. And that has been a problem for Kyle Pitts over the second 2 years of his career. Having the likes of Marcus Mariota and Desmond, a player can only do what he's given with his opportunities. Now, they've only given him 70 targets this year, and you probably want to see him around 90 targets. But with that, he's produced on 45 receptions, 587 yards. Now, conventional wisdom says if you give him more opportunities, he will do even more with them. Now, if you look at other tight ends in the league, there's only 3 tight ends who have 1,000 yards this year. Kittle, McBride, and Bowers. But when you look at some of the other great receiving tight ends in the league, he's right around the same area with them. Travis Kelce is under 700 yards receiving this year. Sam Laporta, another tight end who's really good that a lot of people like to talk about. Mark Andrews, under 700 yards. It also requires for you to have a coordinator to actually get the tight end involved in the offense. Most offenses aren't making the tight end their focal point of their offense, but if you have him in the slot, he's going to be able to block better against a safety. And if he has to block a linebacker in space, he's more effective than if he's on the line of scrimmage because all he has to do is get in the way. That's what blocking is about a lot of time. It's just getting in the way of the person. And he can do that in space a lot more and let somebody like Bijan make his cuts. Plus, he's actually become a lot more effective as a blocker as well, too. I believe from that slot position, and I've said this before, he's a lot more effective than having Ray McCloud out there doing that. He's faster than Ray, and he's a better blocker than Ray would be because when they use Ray kind of is that offset tight end to block on those downs, he's not doing a better job than Kyle Pitts regardless of what you think of Kyle Pitts as a run blocker. Now think about this. Putting Kyle Pitts in the slot along with your blocking tight end, it makes your offense a lot more harder to guard, especially for our offense, because we're running a lot of 11 personnel. Another thing that I've brought up before, Kyle Pitts is only 24 years old. He's just coming into his adult body. He's just coming into being able to physically play with some of these guys, and he's learning the position a lot more as well, too. You've invested way too much capital in a guy like this to just give up on him and let him walk and him turn into something better with other players. He, for real, has not been a bust at this point in time. Think about it. A bust would be a player that you haven't gotten any value out of. He's been so far much more like what a Jadeveon Clowney is. A guy who was not necessarily living up to what a #1 draft pick was, but has been a really serviceable guy in the league, made a few Pro Bowls, very good complimentary piece to other players on the team. And, you know, the type of height that he had on him, he would have had to be Lawrence Taylor to live up to that. The type of height that Kyle Pitts has on him, he would have to be the best tight end ever. A lot of people are looking at him to be Brock Bowers, and he was never going to be that. He was probably a little bit more like a Jimmy Graham, which is why I say you want to put him in the slot a lot more. I think another player that you can really compare him to in another sport in terms of production would be Lamar Odom, and I think that's a great comparison. He's a guy that came out with a whole lot of hype. For him to have lived up to that hype, which he probably never could have, he would have had to be the next LeBron James. As a matter of fact, that's what they were expecting Lamar Odom to be, is what LeBron James is. A guy who could play all the positions, and for all intents and purposes, he had a really great career. He was a guy who gave you championship minutes, was 6th man of the year. Any given point in time can just go off and give you 40 points if you need him to, and he'd also have a clunker of a night. But he was a serviceable guy still. A guy isn't a bust just because he isn't an all-star every year, or he's not a bust because he isn't always a Pro Bowler. If you got a guy who comes out in the first round, you need him to be a starter for you and actually be a person who makes plays for you. And that's what you want out of a tight end. If you traded Kyle Pitts, what kind of value do you think you would get for him? You spent a top 5 draft pick on him. You're not going to get that back from him right now because teams are going to lowball you, but they'd be glad to take him off your hands. But if you got you a 2nd round pick or a 3rd round pick, you can't just guarantee that you will replace what you've gotten out of him. He could easily fall into his zone and start giving you 700 yards per year moving forward. You have the opportunity to see what you have in him next year, and you can even franchise him after that. But you're just not going to get the value that you would want for him. What would be the sense of giving up him for a 2nd or 3rd round pick just to get a tight end who's probably going to give you exactly what he's doing? You're not going to find another Kyle Pitts. There's not another guy who can run like him. You just got to use him to his strengths and use him to the advantages of what he does well. If you took Ray Lewis and you put him at defensive end, you'd probably be looking at what you would consider a bad football player by NFL standards, because he wouldn't be as good as a lot of defensive ends. But you put him at middle linebacker, and we're talking about one of the greatest. So just use him a little bit differently. Once you get a little bit more rapport with him and Michael Penix out there, I believe they're going to have a lot better numbers. But they got to develop that chemistry. And by not having him on the field a lot more often, it makes it harder for you. Guys, that's our show for today. But stay tuned. Next week, I will be doing another episode, win, lose, or draw. And I will continue doing Falcons content into the offseason, letting you guys know what my draft analysis are, letting you guys know where I think we should go with free agency in the offseason, and what kind of moves we should make, what kind of players we should pick, and justifying the moves we make or don't make. And if you enjoy what we're doing, hit that like and subscribe button for us. Small thing for you, but huge for us. C-Mo to C. Mitchell, Point Game Official. Checking out Falcons Bird Bath, baby. Peace.